Hey gang, Kevin here, and we are back. So, if you've been watching the show, specifically today, right? So Lennox hosted the first one this morning in the back seat of the Armada on his way to school, being the only kid. Then we did a how was your first day of school? We got Lennox, and then Lachlan eventually joined us. Then they all got on the bus and went to church for their Wednesday kids schooling. So let's see. So we've had a long day. A fun long day, but a long day. You know, it's just, as soon as I got on the church bus, I'm here just trying to get the podcast up and loaded. I have to do a back to school September one, which is probably the one you just watched because, you know, you guys can't get enough of the content that I produce. But before I could get that podcast even started, I was about to. I was like, yeah, I'm going to press record. And a lady starts screaming and swearing outside of my window to my studio. And I'm like, what is going on? What is she saying? And then she said something about goddamn stupid bitches need to mind their own business. And like, she has to be... And this is hard to tell. Like, we talked about this in the previous episode. It is very hard to tell, like, the age on these people because drugs makes them age like rock stars. So, like, they age very terribly. And it's so... This woman looked like she was 45. She could have been 50. She could have been, like, 22. It is so hard to tell. But she is a scrawny... white chick wearing only hoodies. It is hard to tell her age. She has matted down black hair and just, you know, unwashed. And she's just like holding some possessions. It may have been a purse and a blanket. And she's just kind of, and then she's got PJ bottoms. Just, you know, your typical, what you would expect. I'm sure if I dragged her on the show, you'd be like, oh, that's exactly, that's what I had in my mind. My mind's eye said, that's the bitch. And so she's bitching about, I'm assuming my wife, right? Like, she must be on the front porch, like, you know, telling these people to keep moving. And which is what she wants to do. And I don't blame her. The free speech rights that my wife exudes on the general public that crosses over to a drug house is, you know, protected speech. Their replies back to her are also protected speech. And that's where I'm kind of hung up a little bit. But I know that the police department are getting, some of them are getting a little fed up with my wife. And I don't blame them. That would be a natural response or reaction, but you also have to understand where my wife and all the neighbors are coming from. The natural responses and reactions of mothers trying to take care of their children in a neighborhood where these people can wander in and out of houses. And like the one guy one day was like throwing bags of what looked like white powder out to people. They would say, hey man, I left the 50 on the stoop. And then he'd be like, all right, here it comes. And he'd toss something down out of the attic window. And my wife's like, well, that's clearly drugs. And I'm like, well, here's the issue in New York State. They have this thing called the discovery law, and it's supposed to prevent minorities from being discriminated against and going to jail. And what ends up happening is it just means that the cops have to just assume that they're innocent until proven guilty. And we don't know what those substances are, even though we all know that most likely it's a criminal activity and nefarious behavior. And we all know that it is most likely drugs, because why the hell would you go over to your neighbor's because he can open the Tide Pod for you and then he dumps it into a Ziploc bag and can toss it out an attic window like it's some kind of like magic trick? And so what has to happen is the cop has to see it, says that looks suspicious, and he goes, hey man, need to see what that substance is. And then he has to confiscate it from the person, take down their name and number and information, where they can find them, what bench they can be, you know, the GPS location of the bench that they sleep under, what have you. Then they take it away and then they have it tested. And 6 to 8 weeks later, or longer, when the forensics lab in New York State is done with it, they'll say, hey, this is crack cocaine. This is meth and this is meth. This is meth, but they cut it with Tide Pod. So it actually is Tide Pod. Kevin was right. Like, it's just it's a big goddamn game. Now, I like these laws that also protect me, but I'm not throwing bags of drugs out of windows. I'm not selling drugs. I'm not doing drugs. It's one of those, like, so a lot of this stuff doesn't apply to me, and I don't, and as a concerned father, I don't frankly give a shit what happens to these people. Like, throw them in jail. You should. You should throw them in jail. But this is where I struggle, because they're afforded the same rights under the Constitution that I am, and they have the free right to, congregate and hang out with their friends and, take the edge off. The problem is that they're taking the edge off in my neighborhood, and so they're allowed to wander around like zombies. And a lot of them drop needles. You know how many needles we pick up in our neighborhood, like on the regular? And it's like, nobody seems to care. It's like they'll wander through and they're just like shedding porcupines. They're just kind of like slugging along down my sidewalk, and they're shedding quills onto the sidewalk where my kids walk, where my kids play, on the subway, in the grass at the church across the street, where my kids will play tag with other neighborhood kids. They have not done that in the last like 3 to 6 months. It is ridiculous. They can't go ride in the church parking lot. The church is so awesome how they'll let neighbors park there on street sweeper night. They will donate stuff to the community. They let our kids rollerblade in their parking lot. Like, we look out for them. They look out for us. And there's just so many junkies over there. Like, it would take me days to go get the damn parking lot cleaned of needles and shit like that. And it's gross. It's terrible. And then, so somebody's dropping needles in front of your house, around your house, where your kids play, where your kids commute to school. Wouldn't you be upset that they're dropping needles on the sidewalk? Wouldn't you do anything necessary to protect your children? Wouldn't you? And that's my problem. And that's where I side with my wife, which there was no inkling that I wouldn't side with my wife. Even if she's wrong, I always side with my wife. That is, that's what a husband does. But that aside, my plea to my community, my plea to the police, my plea to the government, that the state government that caused all this, somebody needs to change it. And I have a couple solutions. And so with that plea, this kind of lets you know that, if you're an officer out there who, there's a few that are like, keep up what you're doing, man. You got to protect your family. And then there's other ones that are like, you got to be nice. You should be nice. These people have a problem. All right, well, if you're one of those, we're done being nice when they started dropping needles in my kids realm, the realm of where my kids interact. We're not taking them into dark alleyways. They don't live in the inner city. They don't live in a place they shouldn't live in a bad neighborhood. We didn't buy a house in a bad neighborhood. We bought our house in a nice neighborhood, and now this degenerate situation is going on. So, tough nuggies. And so now you know where we're coming from, in addition to everything else that we've talked about on the channel. So I've got some solutions. Oh, real quick, let's get back to this bitch that's on the street. So this chick is walking by the house, and she is like, fuck them bitches. They just need to leave themselves alone. They need to do this. They need to do that. Well, and then I'm in my office. I haven't seen my wife in a hot minute, and she starts mumbling about I'm glad. This is what I heard. Now, did I misunderstand her ramblings because she's trying to talk like a man? It's the reverse of an AC/DC song. She goes, I am glad that I stabbed that bitch to death. Now, that's what I heard. Maybe I didn't hear it that. Maybe she didn't say it. I'm through a wall. And so I get up and I look out the window and I'm in panic mode now. What did she just say? And then maybe she did mumble I should stab that bitch to death, which I did hear the stab that bitch to death. That is clear. That was clear. That was fully vocalized and audible, even in her crab lady voice. And so I get up and I bolt out of this office before I can get to the next do the next podcast, clearly, because I think my wife is like, bleeding out on the front porch. Clearly, I'm like, June, where are you? And she like answers from the laundry room, and I'm like, okay. Whew. Did you hear what this chick said? Did you hear her? Was there any commotion outside? She's like, no. And then I go outside. Me and her rush outside to make sure that like one of the neighbors isn't like, like hunched up against a tree in the subway bleeding out. And okay, so I must have misheard the woman. Either way, instinctive reaction, like defend my family, defend my neighbors, like we got to take care of this. This is a situation. And apparently one of the neighbors had said something to her because she placed a shopping cart between one of my rental properties and the house that she came out of, that the guy on the recovery program who lets all these other drug addicts stay at, that, it is what it is. They're terrible. They're terrible monsters. They're scum of the earth. But the neighbors were like, wait, she said what? And I was like, oh, I thought she killed one of you because what she said. And they're like, they're looking around for her. I'm like, no, she made it. She's probably a block away now. But she wasn't moving that fast. So I'm pretty sure if she stabbed a bitch to death, she'd be booking it with their scrawny little vulture legs. These grubs. Anyways. So this is the stuff we have to deal with. One of the neighbors says, hey, man, you parked a shopping cart over there. You probably shouldn't leave your garbage and shopping carts in my neighborhood. And then I saw a post on our group today and it said something like, don't engage these people. It's like, no, we're going to engage these people. We're not going to be a watch. My neighborhood watch is not going to be a watchful eye. We are going to be a watchful eye, but we're not just going to sit back and like in the passenger seat and let our lives kind of disintegrate around us. We are going to stand up and fight. And that's really what we're about. I'm glad that my neighbors have the testicular fortitude to tell these people where they can put it, and the shopping cart as well. Like they can stuff those shopping carts right up their asses and go back to wherever hole they came out of, and please return the shopping cart on the way out. There's another big Matt Walsh pet peeve, right? Return your shopping carts. They're in my neighborhood, Matt. They're in my neighborhood. And it's getting ridiculous. We're returning as many as we can, and they're not our shopping carts. Somebody was telling me the other day that Pennsylvania makes you return your shopping carts, or they charge the store. They charge the store a fine to redeliver your shopping cart, which I don't. And I saw another post about how we need to tax the landlords. Now, there are a bunch of landlords that are absentee, but you cannot lump landlords and discriminate them as a group, because there are some of us who take pride in buying properties, fixing them up. Sometimes it's not an overnight thing. Sometimes you don't have just one big lump sum of cash. You buy a house for an exorbitant price because it's post-COVID, and you slowly fix it up with your free time and your expendable income. And then sometimes you do get that lump sum and you just fix it up as much as you can and blah, blah, blah. And then things happen and you can still go to fix them up. And every so often you will get a bad tenant that will slip through the filter of the reporting mechanism, right? Like how we figure out who our tenants are and what they do and all this other stuff. So we figure all that out. And then we make our neighborhoods better. You can talk to a bunch of my neighbors. They're like, man, that house was turning into a real shithole, and then you bought it, and now we get like nice tenants that like, a furnished rental, or you get, like we can move our family in, we can do this, we can do that. And it's like, oh, hey, this summer we're painting the porch on that one, and next year we're siding the side of that one. And we're doing things little by little, but we're making our community better. So it's not just the landlords. I need to point that out because there's so many people that are like, well, yes, but you can go after the landlords because they're inevitably responsible. It's like, no, you're not addressing the problem. The problem is that people are left without accountability. They get to wander the streets, not having jobs, not being productive members of society, and then they shoot up drugs and leave needles in front of my kids. So you guys can go fuck yourselves if you think that that's appropriate. Well, it's their landlord's fault. No, their landlord is not their mom and dad. Their landlord is not supposed to be their mom and dad. I don't care that the government has slowly manipulated, be like, we're your big mom and dad, and then these are your little mom and dads. And it's like, and eventually we're going to squash out your landlord, and then the government will own your property. And then we'll have communism. Hooray! That's how the government thinks, man. Like, that's what it wants. The government wants ultimate power. All governments do. That's why there's checks and balances. You got to remind the government that they are not there to run everything. I don't care what New York City's doing. They're not. I understand that they are an accurate representation of how my state thinks and how a lot of the mealy-mouthed voters from New York City think, but we are not a communist state. We're not a socialist state. We are a democracy. And actually we're a republic, but and we are a republic if we choose to fight for it, and we must fight for it, and that's a big issue. So the real issue is the people have no accountability, they have no agency, they have no duty, and that is, the moral fabric of our society is deteriorating. You have a bunch of people that they don't have a firm religion, they don't have any morals to base any of their decisions on, and then they're like, and I don't have to have a job. Why? I don't need a wife. I don't need kids. I can have a dog. You have to it's my emotional support animal. The government will take care of me, so I don't need that job. And, it's not communism and socialism sounds amazing because I don't have to do nothing. Well, guess what? That's a terrible, terrible thing. Because your rights, those freedoms that I talked about earlier, they mean nothing without duty. You are owed a duty to your community, to yourself, to your spouse, to your children, to your God. These are the things that you owe a responsibility to. And if you don't have those responsibilities, if you don't have those duties, you don't have the freedoms that you so think you do. So, with great responsibility, with great power comes great responsibility. And those freedoms are power. But you have the responsibility to use them with respect and duty, and you have to give back. That's part of it. You don't have to give back monetarily. You have to give back by making good decisions. And shooting up heroin in my neighborhood is not a good decision. Finally getting a job because the government made you get one in whatever state you're in, and then taking your lunch break at the Burger King bathroom and shooting heroin between your toes so they don't find the track marks on you at work. That's not making a good decision. That is being a selfish piece of shit. That's what that is. Mm-hmm. So, I have some solutions, and I would like to share them with you. I don't know if you know how much a shopping cart is. I haven't Googled it, but from what I gather, a shopping cart is close to $1,000. It's not quite $1,000. If our local common council could pass a city code that says, from this point forward, we do not care what the market reflects a shopping cart as. A shopping cart will always be worth to the city of Olean $1,500. Some number that is sizably away from $1,000. Sizably. At which point, if you are caught, and this probably should be included too, the ownership of the shopping cart is the company that advertises on it, unless you have a bill of sale from that company, at which point you have 30 days to remove their logo from it, blah, 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 put on a serial number, whatever, have a shopping cart registry, register your shopping cart at the local municipality. I hate that it has to come to this. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible, and maybe we can tweak it. This is just a rough idea, so I'm just throwing this out there. If you make a shopping cart over $1,000 and somebody has to prove that they own it, and they can't prove that they own it, and it's over $1,000, the assumption is that they've stolen it. And it's pretty easy to make that assumption, and it should be pretty slam dunk in a court of law that someone has stolen a shopping cart, and the shopping cart is now over $1,000, which makes it a grand larceny. At which point we're now, I believe, hopefully, felony charges hopefully, felony charges. No, it's not a violent offense. Maybe we could build that into the code. Our assumption is that shopping carts are worth so much money that no grocery store would let it go would let it be stolen without extreme violent force. You would have to like shoot up the grocery store to take it, right? In this little hypothetical, that's if the law viewed a shopping cart as such a thing, like the Hope Diamond, where they have armed security, full-time staff to shoot people trying to steal it on site without regard for that person's life, because it's like, oh, I thought he was trying to steal a shopping cart. If you could write the local code to make it, to kind of convey that scenario, that's we hold shopping carts to the highest, well, then we could automatically assume that those people have stolen those shopping carts under extreme violent duress, at which point a violent crime most likely has occurred, because we as a city view shopping carts as just under a golden calf, but still below God, right? So that's where we're putting shopping carts on our list, right? Yeah. If we did that, now you can arrest them for what we would consider a violent grand larceny. At which point, hopefully, you can hold them. And yeah, I know the state of New York, right? So we're gonna re-release them, right? We don't catch any of our fish here. We just release them. But it's a good start. I think if you ticket enough of them, there's some good cops on the force. I know a bunch of them. They go down to the homeless, down the encampments are, and they say, "Hey, listen, I told you a week ago, get your shit out of here. Here's your ticket." And the tickets don't mean anything. But you know what? He's giving them. And you got to applaud a guy that does that, because guess what? That's what the laws are there for. Well, if it doesn't mean anything, it's got no teeth. It's like, I don't care if it's got no teeth. Like, your grandmother bites you, she bites you. Like, the fact that somebody is biting at you, and just because they don't have any teeth, should not deter the fact that you are doing something wrong enough that something has to bite you, right? So this is not an ill-provoked bite. We've removed like 16 shopping carts and returned them to their owners within the last like 3 months, and then we're just covering like one city block. It's ridiculous. I hear screaming outside. It's probably my wife and one of the neighbors getting in an argument again with the drug addicts. It's it's never ending. It's tireless. So that was one of my solutions. I had another one earlier. I'll think of it. We'll put it on here. I'm looking for more conjecture. I'm looking for some debate. Oh, you know what? So going into the shopping cart thing, this is something I did want to talk about. We had a lady that she was posting on Facebook on our group about how, like, this is, the stolen kayak in the middle of the night. It may not be stolen, it's just transporting a kayak. Why are you transporting a kayak at 12:30 in the evening, early morning? It's not lunchtime. It's the crack of dawn, right? Like, there's no reason for you to be moving a kayak at that late of hour. And then secondly, you're using a shopping cart. Do you have permission from that store to have that shopping cart away from that store? No. You just stole a shopping cart, and now you're moving a kayak, which you probably don't have I have a purchase receipt for every kayak that I have. These people don't have that. I'm at wit's end. And like I say, I struggle with this. I struggle with all these rights that these people have that I have. And I have a love for my kids that, I have a duty to my kids that supersedes a lot of these people's like rights and lack of duty. And that's where I think about it, like, man, Mike, here's a good solution. Why can't the government confiscate all these drugs? and set the record straight. Like, can't we just have, like, the government can just be like, we took your drugs and we're going to give them back to you. And we've added, you didn't have enough fentanyl in them. We're giving you a lethal amount of fentanyl. So now if you do this, it's not a you might die. It's not a you could die. It's you will. Bad decisions have bad consequences. FAFO. So if you make bad decisions, you get terrible consequences. Like, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. That's my theory. I think it's better than a safe shoot shelter. You know, it is what it is. It's sounding cruel, but guess what? We're at wit's end. I don't know what else to do. I'm just, you know, I like that solution. Listen, we're giving you your stuff back. Here's your shit. So, my wife just came in. She looked pretty peeved. So she probably had some altercation in the neighborhood that she'd like to discuss with me. And I'm going to keep fighting. I'm going to keep fighting the good fight. And I'll be here. If you guys have any questions, if you have any concerns, if you want to chit-chat, if you got ideas for things that we can suggest to the Common Council. I think my shopping cart one, though. I think that's, like, right on the money. If they're just like, this person stole a shopping cart, like, treat them like they just robbed a gun or a car at gunpoint. Like, if you just act that way, like it happened every time, like, these people wouldn't steal shopping carts. Draw your gun, right? Like, guy just sees a person pushing a shopping cart down the street. Cop just pulls up. He's like, sir, put your hands in the air. Like, you just assume that they, like, we do it with traffic stops. Like, you start making jerky movements, man. Like, these people should be in fear for their life. I want a shopping cart. I would probably have to rob somebody at gunpoint to get one. I wouldn't want to do that. Wouldn't want to be caught with one either, especially if these laws pass. So, thanks for joining me tonight on Life22. We will see you guys next time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and continue to send your hate mail and your judgments. We appreciate your judgments. Your judgments against how I break down how we should suggest city law.